Hi guys, Mimi G here. Welcome back to my channel. Luna, what are you doing? Today we're going to be doing a sew along from McCall's 8605. It's a really great pattern designed for a knit fabric. Let's sew. All right guys, we're going to be working on McCall's 8605. I've cut out view A. Everything on the top is the same except for the flounce. So whichever flounce you choose to do, whether you want to do the long one or the kind of high-low one, or A, which is the one that I'm going to be doing, the sewing is going to be the same. The only difference, like I said, is this bottom portion and how much of a hem you're going to have to sew. Aside from that, everything again is exactly the same. Remember that on the back of the pattern envelope, you have a list of suggested fabrics. In this case, we're going to be using moderate stretch knits. So I have a knit that I have had in my stash for quite a long time. You're going to need some notion. So in this case, you're going to need one 18-inch invisible zipper, and you may need some interfacing and underlining, and I'll explain that in just a second, but let's go over the pattern pieces you're going to need to cut. Okay, you're going to cut out pattern piece number 2. This is our bodice back, and you're going to cut 2 of fabric, 2 of underlining if you're using underlining, and then 2 of lining. Now I have made the petite adjustment here, so I have shortened my bodice as I normally have to do. So if you do need to adjust your bodice, this is where you're going to do it, either lengthening or shortening. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 1. This is our bodice front. You're cutting 1 on the fold of fabric, 1 on the fold of underlining, and 1 on the fold of lining. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 3. This is our sleeve, and you're going to cut 2. We have pattern piece number 9. This is the skirt back, and you're going to cut 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 7. This is the skirt front, and you're going to cut 1. We have pattern piece number 10. This is our back flounce, and you're going to cut 2. Then you have a very large piece that you will need to piece together by overlapping these little circles that you see here on those pattern pieces. This is pattern piece number 8. This is our front flounce, and you're going to cut 1. Then you're going to cut out pattern piece number 5 and 6. This is our bodice back facing and our bodice front facing. You're cutting 1 on the fold for number 5 and 1 of interfacing. And then for 6, you're going to cut 2 and 2 for interfacing. Then you have pattern piece 4 and 11. As you can see, I didn't cut these out because these are just my guides for elastic. So instead of cutting them out, I just measure my elastic along the pattern piece. Now, in regards to the interfacing and the underlining. Now, I don't like a lot of structure in my knit dresses. So this is really going to be up to you whether you feel you need the added support and structure to a knit dress or if you don't. So if you do want to interface and underline, then you're going to follow the instructions from number 1 to number 4 to create your underlining piece and also interface your front bodice, your back bodice, and interface your facings. Then it has you create your darts once you have fused your interfacing onto your pieces that are shown here. And then it has you stitch on the underlining. Now this is going to give you a lot more structure, and also remember that the more structure you add to this knit garment, depending on how much stretch your fabric has, if whatever you're using as your underlining or your interfacing, it's going to limit the amount of stretch that your knit fabric has. So if you want the structure, then go ahead and follow these instructions. Like I said, I personally don't like that amount of structure, especially in my knit dresses. So I will not be interfacing my bodices. I will not be underlining. So I'm just going to go ahead and move on to putting together the bodice, which is in step 5. All right, guys, now that you have everything cut out, we can go ahead and start sewing. We're going to go ahead and get our darts out of the way. So go ahead and grab your front bodice, make your 2 front bodice darts. And then on the back skirt, you're going to also make your dart as you see I've done here. You want to make sure and press them and get these ready so that way we don't have to stop to do darts when we start putting our dress together. Okay, go ahead and grab your front bodice. You should have pressed your darts down. We're going to go ahead and grab our back bodice pieces. We're going to go ahead and pin these together at the side seam. So let's go ahead and match those up. You should have a notch. You want to make sure that you are aligning your notch. Okay, you're going to pin your other back to front at the side seam the same way. Now we're going to head to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and set this aside. You're gonna grab your front skirt and your back skirt pieces, and we're going to pin and sew those at the sides. Okay, so we have our front skirt. We're gonna go ahead and grab our back. We have already sewn the darts, or you should have already sewn the darts. We're gonna go ahead and pin our side seams together. So with right sides facing, go ahead and pin your side seams. You're gonna do both of your side seams. Okay, let's head to the sewing machine. We're gonna stitch the side seams of our skirt, again using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're gonna do both of your side seams. Okay guys, now that we have attached our back skirt to our front skirt, I went ahead and serged my seam allowances. You're gonna go ahead and press your seam allowances towards the back. Give them a good press. We're gonna go ahead and attach our skirt to our bodice next. So it's a good idea for you to stop now, go ahead and pin the center back, try the skirt on to make sure that it fits the way that you want. You always want to fit as you go instead of attaching skirt to back or skirt to bodice, then trying it on and seeing if it fits. And if you have to make a change, then you have to remove the skirt from the bodice. So every time that I sew a section, I sort of try it on to make sure that it fits the way that I want before I move on to the next step. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and pin our bodice to our skirt. So right sides facing, you have 2 notches at the waist. You have it at the skirt and you have it at the bodice. So let's just go and pin there first. Then you wanna make sure that you are aligning your side seams, okay? So pin there. Okay, and now we can go ahead and pin the remaining piece of the back. All right, let's head to the sewing machine. We're gonna stitch this together using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I have gone ahead and serged my seam allowance and I have pressed it down towards the skirt. Now you're gonna use pattern piece number 11, which is our guide for elastic, to cut the size of elastic that you need. We do have an elastic in the waist, okay? It's not gonna create gathering, but it will help snatch you at the waist, okay? Especially if you have a big difference between your waist and your hip. This is gonna be very helpful. I actually probably don't need it, but I'm gonna do it so that I can show you guys. So what you're gonna do is, the instructions have you stitch 1/8 of an inch from the edge, from the cut edge or the serged edge, to create a casing. Now I like to stitch on the right side of my garment because I don't want my bobbin thread to be on the right side of my fabric. So I'm gonna be creating my casing using just the guide on my sewing machine. Now you can feel, if you're gonna stitch on the right side of your fabric, you can feel where that fabric is, right? You can feel where that edge is, and you can use that as your guide. If you're not comfortable, then by all means, go ahead and stitch on the wrong side of your fabric so that you obviously have more visibility and you can create a nice straight line. Okay, I have created my casing. I'm gonna use a safety pin because it's small enough to get through there. And I'm gonna go ahead and just pin it through one end. And then on one of the side, center back openings, you're gonna go ahead and just pull your elastic all the way through. Okay, you're going to continue until you get to the other end. Make sure that you're paying attention to this end here so that you don't lose it. When it gets close, go ahead and pin it in place so that you don't lose it inside of the casing and have to start again. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pin my elastic in place. And then I'm just going to pull. And then I'm going to pin the other end. You're just going to go ahead and tack this in place. So head to your sewing machine. Just give it a couple stitches on both ends to secure your elastic. All right, we're going to start working on our zipper. So I have my invisible zipper here. Mine is way longer than I need, but it's what I have. And so before I start, I like to go ahead and press my invisible zipper. So the coils that you have, you can sort of see that if you turn them, you can sort of open this out a little bit more, right? They're kind of curled to the inside. So I like to give that a press and sort of flatten that out a bit. So just with the tip of my iron, I'm just sort of opening those coils out a bit and just giving it a press. You're gonna do that on both sides of your zipper. So let me see if you guys can see the difference. So on this side, you can see it's much flatter, right? Because I've given it a press. Where this side, the coils are still sort of rolling towards the zipper tape, right? So as you're pressing, you're sort of just opening these coils out a bit, and it'll make sewing the invisible zipper a lot easier. All right, guys, we're gonna go ahead and work on our zipper. So I wanted to point out, I added a 5/8 of an inch strip of fusible interfacing onto where my zipper seam allowance will be. This just helps to stabilize my zipper, especially when I'm working with certain knits. Sometimes if you have put in a zipper in a knit dress and you notice that when you put it on, there's a bit of a ripple, this will help with that ripple. So it will just stabilize it a bit. So with my fabric right side facing up, I'm gonna put my zipper right side facing down, meaning the zipper pull is facing the dress, making sure that one zipper tape is to the inside of my dress, my zipper teeth are to the inside of the dress, and we're going to go ahead and pin this in place. Okay, this is where our notch is, where the zipper will end. So I'm just going to put a pin. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine and we're going to go ahead and stitch really close to our zipper teeth without obviously sewing on our zipper teeth. Okay, so we've done one side of our zipper tape. Now what I like to do is I want to close my zipper and I want to make sure that I can mark where my seam line at that waist is going to be, so that way when I attach the other side of the zipper tape to the other side of the dress, that seam line when I close my zipper is going to match up. So just take a marking pen and just make a little line. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and bring the other zipper tape to the other side. I'm going to pin first at that line, matching it to my seam line. And then you're just going to go ahead and pin and stitch the other side the same way that we did the other. And then our little notch there, so I want to make sure that I know where I'm stopping. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine. We're going to do the same exact thing. Okay, we can go ahead and close our zipper. And you'll see that the seam lines are perfectly matched up. Now we just need to close the bottom of our dress. I'm going to turn this right side out. And let's go ahead and pin the remaining part of the dress. Okay, we're going to head to the sewing machine using our zipper foot. We're going to go ahead and stitch right where that stitching stopped, right? As close as we can get. Make sure that everything is to one side. And then we're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now you can turn this right side out. And your zipper should be invisible. Okay, let's go ahead and put our dress to the side. We're gonna go ahead and grab our flounce pieces. Now on each side of your front flounce, you should have 2 double notches. So you're gonna take one of your backs, right side's facing, and you want to make sure that those double notches align and pin there. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, we're going to head to the sewing machine. We're going to stitch down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to do both side seams of your flounce. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and pin together our center back. You should have 3 notches. You're going to go ahead and pin there. Okay, head to your sewing machine. You're just going to stitch 5/8 of an inch, starting at the bottom, working your way up. Okay, we're going to go ahead and pin our flounce to our dress. So I want to start at the center back. I'm going to go ahead and slip this. Turn my dress to the center back. Okay, I'm going to slip this inside of my flounce. I'm going to find my center back seam. I'm going to match those up first. Then I'm going to go ahead and match up my side seams. You should have a notch. Match those up. I'm going to go ahead and match up the other side seam. And then you should have another notch that matches up there. Okay, now we're going to head to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch all the way around using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Alright guys, now that our flounce is on, all you need to do is the narrow hem. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and do a double fold. So I'm going to use my serging as a guide. I'm going to turn over and then turn over again and stitch all the way around. Okay, once your flounce is done, give it a good press. It should be nice on the inside. We're going to go ahead and start working on our sleeve. So I'm going to use my guide, measure out the elastic, and then I'm going to cut 2. I'm going to set my dress aside for just a sec. I'm going to go ahead and grab one sleeve. Okay, now you're going to go ahead and turn under 5/8 of an inch, and then you're going to turn under 1/4 of an inch. So I always like to give myself a stitching guide. So I'm going to head to my sewing machine and I'm just going to stitch 5/8 of an inch from the cut edge so I know precisely where to fold and press. Okay, so I have my stitching guide. I'm going to go ahead and press that down first. And I just want to roll the stitching to the inside so it's not visible on the right side. Okay, now that it's pressed to the inside at the sewing machine, I'm gonna turn under that 1/4 inch and we're gonna stitch very close to that edge. Okay, so just like we did with our waist, we're gonna go ahead and put our elastic through our casing. Okay, you're gonna head to the sewing machine. You're just gonna tack both ends down to secure them in place. Okay, let's go ahead and stitch our underarm seam. So with right sides facing, gonna go ahead and pin. You're gonna pin both your sleeves the same way. And then we're gonna use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and we're gonna stitch starting at the bottom, working our way up. You're gonna do that for both of your sleeves. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and attach our sleeve. So I have already done one and I wanted to show you. The bodice is going to extend 5/8 of an inch. Remember that we still have to attach our facing. So if our sleeve went all the way to the very top, then we would be encasing our sleeve and elastic at the very top. So of course we don't want to do that. So we're pinning the very top of the sleeve 5/8 of an inch from the cut edge. Make sure that you're aligning the proper notches. There's 2 notches in the back, 1 notch in the front. I'm gonna go ahead and pin my underarm seam to my side seam first. I'm gonna pin 5/8 of an inch from the top and pin. Okay, now you're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch this using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, we're going to go ahead and work on the front facing. I have pressed both sides in 5/8 of an inch. I gave myself a stitching guide as usual, and I'm going to go ahead and just serge the bottom of this with the sides pressed. Okay, so now looking at the front of my dress with the right side facing up towards me, I'm going to go ahead and pin my facing. I'm going to open out this side and stitch across first. They have you do it differently, but I just think this is cleaner. But you can do it however way you want. And you have some notches. Okay, now we're just going to stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we have gone ahead and understitched. You're going to have to do some hand stitching, okay, but you can do that at the very end. You're going to press your facing to the inside. Now on the inside, you'll have that nice clean finish, and you're just going to slip stitch this closed so that it stays in place. Okay, so we're working on our back facing. I have already gone ahead and serged the bottom. Now we're gonna go ahead and do one side at a time. You're gonna do the other side exactly the same way, so we'll do one together. Now you have a notch, right? So you wanna match up that notch there. And I'm gonna pin, and we'll be closing this off. Okay, we're gonna stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we went ahead, stitched it, understitched it, and then closed off the side. We're gonna go ahead and trim some of this. Okay, you're gonna press your facing to the inside, and just like in the front, we're gonna fold over that seam allowance, and then you're going to hand stitch it on the inside. All right, you guys, all you have left to do is to hand stitch the inside of your facings and then finish off the hem of your sleeve, and you are all done. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that sew along. Leave your comments below. And as usual, please follow if you're not already on Instagram at MimiGStyle. Until next time, peace.